My guest today is the founder and CEO of deaffriendly.com. Today you will hear her amazing story, how at the age of 8, she gradually started losing her hearing. Losing that sense and gaining a new language and culture sparked a profound life journey. In 2011, she created her most important life's work. It is deaffriendly.com, a consumer review platform for the deaf and hard of hearing community. Through her work, she is revolutionizing how businesses and corporates interact with the estimated 48 million deaf and hard of hearing consumers living in the U.S. In the summer of 2016, she expanded and launched Deaf Friendly Consulting, providing training and education to a range of U.S. businesses from small startups to Fortune 500, striving to become more inclusive to this demographic. Please welcome to the show, Melissa Echo Greenlee.
Hi.
It's so great to have you on the show today. And it's just amazing to be here in this room. We're doing a video version, which is new for us. And we have a signer here because in the intro, people heard me tell them that you are deaf. And it is so brave for you to be here on a podcast. And I really want to talk to you about a short conversation you and I had earlier today about podcast and the deaf community and the hard of hearing community. So I'd love for you to tell me how you responded to me today about that.
So, first of all, deaf people have no access to podcasts. So, when you asked me to be on your podcast, I had no idea what that looked like or sounded like, and that was very frightening to me. But I am trying to say yes to things before my fear says no, and just rolling with it.
It's so amazing to hear you say that. And so many people, I think, have lots of fears in their life, and they don't always address them, and they don't always step out. And thank you for being brave and for being on this podcast. It means a lot to me, but I think it probably means a whole lot more to you and the community that you serve. So really appreciate you being here today.
Yes, thank you. I want to add something also. I know that podcasts typically are not accessible to my community. And one of the reasons for that is because it's audio-based and our ears don't function like yours and we can't access the audio. Without the sign language interpreter here, we would not be able to do this. So I want to thank you for also agreeing to be accessible to this interview for me and for my community so that we can get a taste of what that's like.
Yes, I love that. And it's really amazing to have you here. And I'm inspired already. And we haven't even started the interview, which is fantastic. So I would love to hear more about your name. So your name is Melissa Greenlee, but you have this quotations, Echo, and you go by the name Echo. And I would love to hear the story behind that.
Yeah, so I wish that my parents were hippies and they happened to give me the name Echo, but that's not the case. My parents are actually very conservative. When I was probably 19 years old, I was exposed to my first deaf person who was culturally deaf. And up until that time, I did not identify as a deaf person. I lost my hearing when I was 8 years old. So from 8 to age 18, I did not have a deaf identity. It was something I was very ashamed of and trying to hide from the world. And so when I moved to Seattle and was exposed to deaf people for the first time, I felt like I went through a complete identity crisis. And I was discovering for the first time there's people like me. And I felt like I needed a new name. I felt like a completely different person. So one night, over a few drinks with my roommate, we came up with that name, Echo, and it just stuck for the last 20 years.
Well, I love it because there is, in an echo, you hear things several times. And I think just your presence and your energy, it echoes and reverberates in a room when you're there. And it's been great to be at this conference with you for the last couple of days, just to kind of see that play out. So thank you very much.
I like that. Thank you.
I want to talk to you a little bit about what you're doing. You're working with this community, which, the statistics around this are amazing. Almost 48 million people in the United States who are either deaf or hard of hearing. And I think it's great what you've done to try to connect this community to everybody else. And I would love for you to tell me what sort of inspired you to do this.
Wow. I'm deaf myself, and every day I go about the world with communication barriers. And I try to go to college. I try and get my coffee every morning, dry cleaning. My access to healthcare is sometimes limited because I don't have access to proper communication channels. And I am fighting for equal opportunity for my community. And I really want to break down those barriers so I can get by in the world a little better. So it's not so frustrating for myself, for my community, for our deaf kids. And so I do the work that I do because I want to make a big impact. I want to educate people about things that they don't know about us to make it easier.
Wow, it's super moving. What you're doing in the world is so needed and not something that you hear of every day. And so I'm really, really glad to see you doing this in the world and bringing this community together like this. You're an entrepreneur and you are working on this platform and you're doing all this work in the world. And that requires a lot out of you too. And I would think even not being able to hear things in your world probably requires double work for you or triple work sometimes, like you said, just getting access to things. And as an entrepreneur who is deaf, what is the mindset you take on yourself to get up every day and say, I'm going to make this happen?
Wow, I think that, first of all, when I meet a person for the first time, they are often afraid of me because maybe they've never met a deaf or hard of hearing person before. They don't know how to interact with someone like that. It's very new to them and uncomfortable. So I spend a lot of time making other people feel comfortable with me. And I do that by holding their hand, by smiling, being over friendly to make sure that they're comfortable. And I can't do anything until first they're comfortable. So it takes a lot of work on my part to make sure people are comfortable interacting with me first. Yeah. And then I can share my vision with them for a deaf-friendly world. And the word friendly is in my business because we go about it in a very friendly way. We understand and we empathize with people that are experiencing something new for the first time. And we try and be very friendly about it.
Yeah. It's amazing how much fear holds everyone back. And I really like what you said about you take people's hands and walk them through this. And because it's so needed. And we shouldn't be afraid of something that's different or something that we're not used to, but it's sort of human nature for us to do that. And just speaking it out and hearing that from you is super inspiring. And the people listening should really, really take heart to this, that it's not just about certain types of communities, it's about all communities, how we fear crossing different barriers and lines. And so you've shown a great example of that in what you're doing. And it's just magical to watch.
Thank you.
So I want to ask you about a subject that I talk a lot about on this podcast as well, too, which is self-awareness. Because as a deaf person, you probably have to be even more aware of your surroundings because you can't hear things. But that probably also requires you to be even more self-aware of just the things that are going on inside of you and how you're energetically connecting with people and some of the stuff you talked about. So how has self-awareness played a role in your journey over the last few years?
Well, it's been a journey. And I'm 42 years old, and I did not become proud of who I was until I was about 20. So really, I've been on this journey for 20 years
Yes.
of accepting myself. And I think it's very important to be okay, be able to sit with yourself, and recognizing how things feel, your decisions that you make, how do they feel deep inside your gut, using your intuition, and the energy that you're putting out. I think it's important.
Yeah, it's very important. So let's talk about another big buzzword in this sort of thought around mindset, and that is emotional intelligence. And I want to just get your thoughts on what that means to you, first of all, because I think there's a lot of different definitions out there. And how do you utilize emotional intelligence in the deaf community?
I think it's very important to have empathy. That's one of the major emotions that drive what we do. And I think more and more companies need to learn how to have empathy, especially when you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. You need to have empathy. I think that's very important for corporations to start educating their staff and their teams about how to be empathetic to people around them. And you can't really help disadvantaged people without being empathetic to them. So,
yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. So I want to just kind of unfold a little bit your story. So at the age of 8, you started losing your hearing. I was wondering if you could, first of all, kind of walk us through that, if you don't mind, and just what was your experience like, sort of physically and emotionally?
Well, I would say from the time, so when I lost my hearing at 8, it was very gradual. So from age 8 to 18, it was very slow loss. There were some days I didn't even notice it. There were other days that I couldn't hear anything. And my parents, my father particularly, he's a Virgo, and he does not accept things unless there's answers. He loves answers.
Yes.
So he was on this quest to fix me. And every year I would go participate in research at the University of California, Irvine, where they have a medical school.
Right.
And they would research me and study me every year for 3 days, trying to figure out why this happened, how can we fix it, make it better for her. And there was no concrete solution. So from age 8, people have been trying to fix me. And most people who are born deaf, people are starting to fix them when they're day 1.
Yeah.
And so that story that something's wrong with me starts very young and travels with you until today.
Yes.
Not feeling good enough, feeling I need to be better. It's a very hard story to get out of our head. And I wish that more people saw deaf people as gifts. That's their superpower.
Yeah.
That's something that sets them apart. Their weakness is actually their success. And instead of being the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, we had a conversation about this term of hearing impaired, which I do not like as well. There's nothing broken here. You're a human being. You're a wonderful person. And, you know, if people would just get past their fear and, like you said, take your hand and walk with them, I think we would see this magic and this beauty that comes out in just you're a person. You're like anybody else. And I love that. And I wonder for you, like, how are you helping people and businesses really crack this code? What are the things that you sort of start with them on?
You start with a smile. And really, it's about relationships. It's about showing people that you're human.
Yes.
And once they can break down that initial fear-based mindset they have about you being disabled, you can really start having quality conversations, and they start listening. But there's a huge barrier also for me to get into the same room with a person to start those relationships, because I do have a communication barrier. It's not going to go away. It's going to be with me forever.
Yeah.
So luckily, we have an interpreter here helping us today. I don't always have access to that. So if I can't get in front of the right people with an interpreter, I can't get my message across. So there's constantly that barrier that's there for me. And I've had to be creative and find ways to make it work. And it takes a huge bite out of my revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the end, I feel like I'm benefiting the other person so much, but they don't see that value.
Yeah.
At least not to start with. So it's challenging.
Yeah.
But
I bet. Well, and you are truly adding value to a lot of companies that you're working with and the things that you've been doing. I wonder, as an entrepreneur, you're probably full of ideas. You probably have this nice notebook full of ideas somewhere of things that you do as an entrepreneur. What's a passion project or something that you're excited about right now, other than the great work that you're already doing?
So something we're involved in right now is with the Seattle Equity. It's actually called Seattle Diversity Equity Cohort.
Okay.
And the Gates Foundation has sponsored Seattle Center and given them money to become more racially diverse and more equitable. And they've invited us to come speak to 28 different organizations on the Seattle Center property, which is the ballet, the opera, science museum, Space Needle, Mopop, music, all kinds of venues are on the Seattle Center property. So they've invited us to come speak to make their businesses more accessible to people who are deaf and hard of hearing. And it's just January 2020, soon February, and that's got us on a great roll for what's to come.
Oh, that's great. It's really exciting to see you doing other things, getting more work out there in the world, because it's so needed. I want to just acknowledge today how super impressed I am with you as an entrepreneur, as a female entrepreneur who has really, really stepped up and done something really amazing in the world. And I just want you to know that in this podcast, you're teaching me and I'm learning. And I know that people will listen to this and will have a completely different sort of shift in the way that they're viewing this community, that they're viewing what you have told us. And it's super inspiring. And I think that it would be excellent for any businesses out there who want to raise the bar on how they're working with people in this community. And I hope that they will get in touch with you and that they'll actually make that happen as a result of this.
Thank you. I do have a personal ask, if you don't mind.
I would love it.
I would love to, for any business, individual, or corporation that is listening, I would like them to think about how their business or service or personal investment, how they are including people who are deaf and hard of hearing into that, or how are they excluding them. The worst thing you can do to someone is not include them. And so think about how you can start including them. That's my big ask, if you're listening.
Yes, that is so great. And thank you again for being so brave to do this and for agreeing to do this with me. I know it probably wasn't an easy decision, but I do appreciate that very much. And I know this will be super inspiring to the listeners.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we will also have this produced on this video format. We also will have the transcribed text. So this can all be shared within your community. And it's made me rethink about how I want to distribute my other podcast as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.